started. So for the next session, what we're about to discuss is about scaling and optimizing Kubernetes with the power of Carpenter. So again, I am Romar. Thank you for that wonderful intro. I am an AWS community builder. This is my second year already, and my domain is actually about containers. And that passion of mine about containers also leads me to get into the Cloud Native Computing Foundation, or CNCF, Cubes or Not program. So earlier, Sir Roms discussed about the AWS Golden Jacket. Under CNCF, there's also a blue jacket naman. So that's for Kubernetes actually. I don't have one yet, but basically, I'm waiting for that jacket to come maybe within this year. So by the way, just a quick commercial lang rin. So there will be like an upcoming Kubernetes user group meetup which will happen this September 25. So maybe you'll be interested also coming into that one to discuss more about, not just about Kubernetes, but the cloud native space or landscape as a whole. So without further ado, let's head down into our agenda. So I just have like 4 bullet points in here, right? So understanding the importance or the need for automated scaling. So we are all aware that Kubernetes handles the scaling of workload, right? But still there's limitation. Kubernetes alone cannot scale the underlying resources by itself. So there's a need for a solution to handle that kind of scaling. And that's where Carpenter will come into the picture. So we'll take a look how Carpenter would work and basically complement Kubescheduler to handle resource scheduling within our cluster. We'll take a look as well or dive into the demo. And then lastly, key takeaways and some additional resources that you might get interested in after this talk. So let's start with defining what Kubernetes is first, and then let's discuss how does Kubernetes scale. So in a nutshell, Kubernetes is a container orchestration platform. Again, it's a container orchestration platform, meaning it handles automatic deployment and management of your containerized workload. Now, going back to the question, how does Kubernetes scale? So there are 2 things to take a look at when we are talking about scaling in Kubernetes. Number 1 is scaling the workloads or scaling the application that you are about to deploy or deploying into that cluster. The other one is scaling the resources or cluster resources that these workloads that you have deployed needs for it to be able to run on your cluster. So in here, we have pod auto-scaling, and on the other side, we have node auto-scaling. So Kubernetes itself can handle the pod auto-scaling so long as you deploy or create HPA or VPA to it, or tell Kubernetes, hey, whenever this CPU utilization hits, add additional pods. So that's HPA or horizontal pod auto-scaling. So you basically add a copy of your application X times, depending on what you set on your configuration. You set the minimum and then the maximum, you set threshold. What would you like to monitor? Is it memory? Is it CPU? So basically, it's almost similar to how auto-scaling group in AWS works, right? So you add additional node in AWS ASG. In here, you add additional copy of your application if the demand increases. The other one is VPA or vertical pod autoscaler. So this is where you add additional resources. When I say resources, this could be CPU, memory, storage. So depending on the demand, depending on the traffic coming into your application, you can pretty much adjust this CPU, this memory up or down. And typically, VPA or vertical pod autoscaler is meant to be used for stateful application or maybe for application or modeling application that doesn't have the capability to handle this kind of horizontal scaling. Now, we'll not be focusing more about pod autoscaling because in here, we'll discuss more about the cluster itself. How do we handle the scaling of the cluster? So in here, we have node autoscaling, we have the cluster autoscaler, and then we have Carpenter, which is our main agenda for today. So let's discuss a bit more about cluster autoscaler. So assume that there's an increase in demand for our application. Maybe it's Black Friday sale, so there's a lot of users coming into your application, adding items to the cart, and then transacting it. So assume that there's an increase in demand. So basically, you set up this HPA, and then HPA kicks in. So additional pods were created. However, since our cluster doesn't have enough resources, doesn't have enough memory, CPU, or storage, these 4 pods in here will be in pending state. So they are still unschedulable. Right? So what will happen is, this is where cluster autoscaler or carpenter will come into the picture. So starting with cluster autoscaler connects to Amazon EC2 Autoscaling Group or ASG for it to be able to tell, hey ASG, add additional node in my cluster. So in a sense, cluster autoscaler needs a middle service for it to be able to scale your cluster, to add additional capacity to your cluster. And that kind of setup gives additional latency or node provisioning latency. So what Carpenter tries to solve is to remove that kind of middleman software or service rather, and then directly connects to the cloud provider's API. Yes, you've heard it right, cloud provider's API, not just AWS. Because Carpenter, just last month, released its version 1.0, basically it graduated from beta version, and is now under the Cloud Native Computing Foundation. So it's now under CNCF, and one of its roadmap, or part of its roadmap, is to support not just AWS, but also other cloud providers. So as of this moment, Carpenter supports Amazon EKS as well as Azure Kubernetes service. So as I mentioned, Carpenter directly communicates to the cloud provider's API. So as soon as there is an increase in demand on our application, autoscaling kicks in, additional pods were created. If there are pending pods, Carpenter will detect that, and then Carpenter will provision the necessary node or compute capacity needed just to host these 4 pending pods. Alright, with that said, Carpenter is an intelligent and high-performance Kubernetes compute provisioning and management solution, right? So it gives you this kind of rapid scaling, dynamic, groupless node provisioning, as well as automatic node sizing. This diagram that you are seeing on the screen is directly pulled from Carpenter's official website. So if you're interested, you can visit carpenter.sh. And what I just wanted to show in here is that with Carpenter, complementing Kubernetes components such as the Kube Scheduler, right? It gives you this capacity and capability to handle and manage the underlying infrastructure or the underlying compute resources within your cluster. So if we have Kube Scheduler in Kubernetes itself or alone, Kube Scheduler can only schedule pods for or in the resources available within your cluster. However, Kube Scheduler alone cannot create these additional nodes on your behalf. So this is where again Carpenter can complement that. As soon as Carpenter sees that there's pending pods or unschedulable pods, and that's where Carpenter will ask the cloud provider, hey, give me this kind of EC2 instance, this type of EC2 instance, this size of EC2 instance, and such. So with that in mind, it gives you this kind of automatic scaling again. And since Carpenter only provisioned just enough, the right size EC2 instance just to host these pending pods or unschedulable pods, it gives you the capability to further reduce the cost of your cluster. Again, more than just scaling, Carpenter helps us in cost optimization. It supports diverse workload. It helps us upgrade and patch, especially if we enable the expiry option for our nodes, making sure that the nodes are always fresh, or the components running on each and every nodes are actually fresh and is aligned with the versions running on your control plane. It is also Kubernetes native. Again, as I mentioned earlier, it is now supporting not just Amazon EKS, but also other Kubernetes managed services. And basically, the way you manage this configuration for Carpenter is almost similar on the way you handle or manage your deployments, your pods, your ingress, your service. You write a manifest file, right? In YAML file. So basically, the way you configure Carpenter is almost the same with that one. You define the API version, you define the kind, you define the metadata, you define the spec, etc., etc. So in Carpenter, we can take a look at into node class and node pool as 2 main custom resources in Carpenter. So think of node class as cloud-specific configuration, and with that, everything related to, let's say, VPC, subnets, where you would like to provision these instances, this is where you will be defining it, right? Including the tags for the EC2 instances that Carpenter will provision, you can put it into your node class configuration. Another custom resource is node pool. Node pool basically is an object where you can define all of the requirements or constraints that you would like Carpenter to respect or to take a look at. So this is where you define taints and toleration. This is where you define, hey, Carpenter, only provision instances on availability zone A, or maybe only in availability zone B, etc., etc. This is where you also set up expiration for your nodes for you to be able to make sure that everything or every components running within your cluster are always fresh and is aligned with the version of your control plane. Alright, so let's take a look into what the configuration of a node pool would look like. So we have here the API version, we have the kind, we have the metadata, and we have the spec. Almost similar on how you create your, let's say, pod management file, right? Or maybe deployment, state to set, etc. So for the API version, I am using carpenter.sh/v1. For the kind, it's node pool. For the metadata, I named it as general purpose. So I'm just telling Carpenter to only provision in here based on the requirements, only provision instance family from this list, T3, T3A, M5, M5A. This is a way for you to constrain or to limit the options Carpenter would look like or would look at. And then you also define here again the availability zone. You would like to provision these instances, as well as the CPU architecture. If you are using Graviton, so most likely you will be using ARM-based instances, or maybe you can pretty much use both. So you can pretty much define it in here, as well as the capacity type, whether you are using spot or on demand. Alright, so in terms of the strategies when defining node pool, there are a couple of things to consider. First is if you are running homogeneous workload on your cluster, meaning these workloads may require almost similar requirements, right, or compute capacity, you can just simply create one node pool and then have it used all across your workloads. The other one, which is the one that I can suggest, is multiple, or creating multiple node pools, depending on the different purposes for your workloads. Assuming that you are running a multi-tenant cluster or managing a multi-tenant cluster where you have different kind of workload with different requirements, with different compute capacity requirements. So basically, this is where multiple types of node pool can be very much helpful, right? You can create a node pool for general purpose. You can create a node pool for compute optimized instances or memory optimized instances. So that is where you can pretty much make use of multiple types of node pool. The other one is weighted. It is almost similar to multiple, but you set weights, right? The higher the weight, that will be like prioritized by Carpenter. So let's take a quick look on how Carpenter works. So what I did in here is just to take a screenshot of each and every important piece or keyframes on the actual video, but at the end of the presentation, I'll be sharing you a link on the actual video recording. But to start with, this is how it would look like. On the topmost side, we have a terminal running EKS Node Viewer. This is where we will be seeing all of the nodes created and managed by Carpenter. On the lower side of the screen is another application. It is called Lens. Right? It is an app that you can make use of to manage and maintain Kubernetes objects. Right? On the middle side, we have multi-AC app. Right? So this is the deployment that we are about to scale. So the scaling would be from 0 to 2. That's the first action that we will do in a while. The second action is scaling from 2 to 6. And then the third action is scaling from 6 back to 0. So we will take a look into how Carpenter would behave or react on those scaling. And then on the lower side of the screen are the logs from Carpenter. This is where you will also see how Carpenter behaves based on the reaction, based on its reaction. And yeah, let's take a look how things would look like. So starting from 0, we will increase the number of replicas to 2. In here, Cube Scheduler will create those pods, but it won't run automatically, right? Because there's no pods or nodes available within our cluster. So hence, it will be like in pending state, and then Carpenter will detect that there are pending pods within the cluster. Then Carpenter will provision additional nodes on our behalf. So on the topmost side, you'll see that there are 2 additional nodes of size T3 small, and then not ready state. After a couple of seconds, these nodes will be available, and as you might see, all of the pods in here are now up and running and are scheduled on those 2 nodes that has been created or provisioned by Carpenter. So one thing to look at is the cost estimate at the topmost. So if you are running 2 T3 small, we will be like billed $10 per month. And then let's take a look more further into scaling from 2 to 6. So let's see in here, scaling from 2 to 6, Carpenter decided to create additional node of size X large. After a couple more of seconds, as you may see, these pods or these additional pods were scheduled into these additional nodes on the topmost side. However, if you will be taking a look at the utilization for the 2 additional pods, it's 55%, right? So there's more enough space or resources, meaning we can still add additional resources on it. And since the configuration of node pool that I have created earlier has consolidation feature enabled, I am telling Carpenter to consolidate nodes so that we can further reduce costs. So meaning, what will Carpenter do is to move some of the workloads from the previous nodes so that we can maximize this 2x large, and then afterwards terminate all of those previous instances to reduce the cost that we have, right? So in here, from running 4 instances, which might cost us $119, and when we consolidate it, it would be like down to $108 per month. So again, with the use of Carpenter, it helps us to further reduce the cost by enabling this consolidation feature, as well as to make sure that we are fully maximizing the resources available within our cluster without it over-provisioning and without it under-provisioning. And then going back to our third and last action, scaling back to 0. So from 6 replicas, we will scale it down to 0, and let's see how Carpenter will behave. So in here, as you might see, as soon as we scale it down, you will see that Carpenter decided to delete one of the node because there's no utilization in that specific node or instance. After a couple more of seconds, Carpenter will terminate all of the nodes because again, there are no pods or workloads running within our cluster. So if you would like to see that live in action, I have a recording uploaded on YouTube. You can scan the QR code or you may visit through the link. And if you are interested provisioning an EKS cluster, having Carpenter installed on it, I have an OpenTofu template uploaded on my GitHub repository. You can run that template and then see Carpenter by yourself. Alright, so on my last few slides, key takeaways. Use Carpenter when you want to provision nodes based on workload requirements. You may be working or managing a multi-tenant application with different workloads, with different requirements. So basically, Carpenter can help you manage and maintain those kind of node pools and then set each workload based on the requirements of each workloads that you are running. And then in here, of course, if you have like multiple nodes within your cluster, then you have to make sure that you have the strategy to schedule these pods into that specific node pool. Say you have tenant A tenant A should only use node pool A. How can we do that? That is by means or by using node selector, node affinity, anti-affinity, or things and toleration, or maybe combination of those. So that helps you make sure that project A or tenant A can only be scheduled on node pool A, or maybe node pool B, or maybe a different set of node pools. These are the additional resources. Again, Carpenter's website, carpenter.sh, has a very, very good documentation. So take a look at it. As well as there's a best practice documentation for AWS EKS. That includes Carpenter. For workshops, you may visit these two links. And then I also have created a blog post. This is a 3-part series that discusses Amazon EKS. The first one is about provisioning. The second part is about deployment of workload leveraging Carpenter. And then the third one is about monitoring and observing this workload that you have deployed within your cluster. So that is beginner friendly, and there's a repository dedicated for that series that you can pretty much make use of in playing around with Kubernetes. So again, that's the end of my session. Opening the floor for any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Romar, for that insightful presentation on Carpenter and Kubernetes. Your expertise and practical advice are much appreciated. Now that we've had an insightful talk from Mr. Romar, it's time for your questions. We'll address a few questions now, and if you have any questions, you can kindly raise your hand. But note to please be respectful and ask in English if possible.
Hey, that was a great talk. Thank you. I have a really quick question. I have a lot of questions, but I'm just asking. Do you have an idea like why would we go with Carpenter as opposed to the automatic autoscaler within EKS? Like, what's the sort of a decision factor whether to go with Carpenter or go native with what EKS is offering?
Yeah, so for you to be able to scale, there's a managed node group in EKS, right? But for you to be able to scale that, you have to install either cluster autoscaler or Carpenter. So that alone will scale the cluster resources. So you have to find a way to make sure that there's a controller running on your cluster that says, hey, there's no enough resources in my cluster, autoscale.
Yes, I understand what I'm saying. The option for Carpenter is it's an addition, right? Prior to that, Carpenter didn't exist as an option. So, what are things going on here? Why do we have to go with Carpenter for newer workloads? Is the cluster autoscaler one just there for, legacy?
Yeah.
I don't know what the deal is.
Alright. So as I mentioned earlier, we have like cluster autoscaler, right? The other one, and then we have Carpenter. So for homogeneous workload or for small types of workloads that you're running in the cluster, you may, of course, use cluster autoscaler. Basically, you may want to use Carpenter if and only if you have like managing multi-tenant cluster, wherein you have different, again, workloads, different requirements for that workload, and you have to maintain list of node pools for each and every workload. Because with cluster autoscaler, you have to create separate managed node pool for each and every requirements that you may have. So maybe you have cost optimized managed node group for T3 small, you have compute optimized managed node group for, let's say, M5 large. So there's a specific configuration that you can manage or you can work around on managed node group that limits your flexibility to make use or leverage different kinds of family, instance type, CPU generations, and such. So that's the main reason. So hopefully that answers the questions. Thank you.
Hi, Sir Rom. I just want to ask, it's not really one or the other, right? Like, you can use cluster autoscaler as well as Carpenter at the same time. Because one problem I had in Carpenter is that it creates and destroys nodes very fast. So, is there some kind of a sweet spot or like parang best practice?
Alright, so in terms of like on the challenge that you're encountering when Carpenter tries to delete this kind of nodes immediately, there's a configuration that you can set. It's under disruption and then consolidation in, I think, period. You just have to set what best fit with your requirements. Maybe you set it with a higher duration before fully terminating it. But what I really suggest is just to pick either one, Raster Autoscaler or Carpenter, but not both in just the same cluster. Thank you.